Welcome to the SEA Center's new podcast, Perspectives. We are a New Delhi based think tank, and this podcast is a platform for our researchers to discuss technology policy issues in an accessible format.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of our podcast Perspectives. This week we're going to be talking about the increasing integration of AI into dating apps. And the trigger for this is a recent interview that Hinge's founder Justin McLeod gave to a few media outlets talking about Hinge's plans to integrate AI into its service. So Hinge, for instance, is planning to integrate AI to ensure that people can craft better profiles, to give better responses to prompts, which are more likely to get matches from other people, and also personalize their matches in a way that ensures it's more likely to meet people that they're compatible with. But while on the one hand, there are some people who are optimistic about what this means for the future of online dating and, a world where people are increasingly facing fatigue and are kind of getting tired of dating apps, you have a range of skeptics who are apprehensive that this will only make existing problems with online dating worse, reduce authenticity online, introduce a whole range of maybe safety, privacy risks. And so the current way forward for this is really, really unclear. But so we're going to deep dive into all of that. So Chavi, to get us started, why don't you tell us what AI integration into dating looks like? Because from what I get, this is just one way and one app that's thinking of doing it, but there are a host of other ways that AI is coming into this space, right?
Yeah, the premise behind AI integration and apps kind of wanting to do that is simple. They just want a more efficient way to match people together. So some apps are directly doing that. They're training AI models on user data and basically asking the artificial intelligence present to just match those together. But some others have taken another approach where they've allowed AI to enable users to create better prompts and to generate icebreakers for the conversation. So while they match to the person they are matched with according to the algorithm, how the conversation starts become better, and that might prompt them to be more genuine and share more interests and stuff like that. But new age apps like Riz are going a step beyond. They're also trying to actually enhance the profile in general. So some of these apps they are doing that by just enhancing the existing written text on the profile. Some of them are enhancing your actual profile photos, while some are just using AI to enhance your voice if they have the voice feature enabled. So these are all some of the different ways which AI has been integrated and which has sparked a lot of debate around how authentic people are on these apps.
Taking from the loss of authenticity, I think right off the bat, that is one of the most apparent that emanates from this integration and concept as a whole. But I feel like, so what this really means is that the prompts will generally refine your responses, your general conversations. And so people might come across more polished, more charming than they would be ordinarily. And this just means that there is a risk of inauthentic conversations, inauthentic presentations, and ingenuine connections to be formed, which once you probably take it forward and if you ever happen to meet in person, there could be a sense of disillusionment and a mismatch. What this also means is that it might affect people's confidence in their communication skills, because over time this reliance might chip away at their ability to communicate and the general skill set. And when they are without the guidance of AI prompts, they might not be as confident as they would with the guidance around.
Yeah, I think, and building on what Madhya has just shared, I think there are two broader problems, and echoing just what Madhya has said. One is like the problem of deceptive expectations, as what Madhya has said, because if AI, largely is going to polish your profile, it's going to draft your messages, but eventually later, somewhere down the line, you're going to meet that person in the offline world, in the real world, and if that online persona that you have created, which is largely shaped by this AI assistance, is very different from the actual person that you are, and that sort of sets up for the disappointment. It's going to create a deceptive expectation, and when that thing sort of crashes, it's going to really hurt for the other person. The other thing is like deteriorating social skills, especially for the Gen Z, as we anecdotally know, who already are sort of struggling with rejection and building resilience in the offline world, especially in the face-to-face situations. And if a bot is doing all of the work for them, writing their messages, doing it on their behalf, selecting their photos, they don't even do it themselves, what happens to that generation? We are essentially raising a generation which is really polished online but is really unprepared in the real world. So these are two problems that I largely see with the integration of AI chatbots with the dating apps.
Going beyond this, I think there's also a larger issue of people not being able to trust dating apps as much. Now, if I knew that the person I am talking to might be either a bot or someone who's using an AI chatbot to essentially enhance their presence, I might even just turn to chat GPT in general and just have a chat with them, right? And I think people are also facing that fatigue and, starting to go offline a bit more. Beyond that, there's also safety considerations that come with it. The not knowing red flags aspect of it, you will actually is very likely to cause harm when you actually end up meeting those people offline, which is the purpose of these apps. So that is also something I think we'll have to look into as this landscape evolves.
Yeah, I think I agree, but I would also question how much of this is necessarily an AI problem. For instance, even if you look at dating apps before AI, I can think all these concerns existed then. So, okay, maybe I didn't have an AI bot doing this for me, but maybe I was texting someone virtually. I had a friend sitting next to me saying, say this, say that, talk to them this way, ask them about this. And so that's why concerns about authenticity, I get it, because the way this problem is being mediated now is changing. But perhaps it's just a larger feature of dating also, in that it's also an arena of life where people are under a little more social scrutiny. We are very self-conscious. We want to appear attractive to whoever it is that we would like to go on a date with. And that maybe causes us to anyway tip towards being a little inauthentic. Of course, if you add AI to the mix, that tendency can be exacerbated. Like you were saying, there's a sycophantic side. AI may not necessarily, it will always pander to you in some sense. But I would also think of this as not being a new problem, but being just a new modality of an existing kind of problem. Even when it comes to safety, for instance, like you were saying, Chavi, like I think, yeah, somewhere, yes, you could be catfished. Somebody could present themselves as very different than they really are. And again, that's something that could happen, say, if you were set up on a blind date. I mean, hopefully no one sets you up on a terrible blind date, but there is always a chance that when you interact with a stranger, basically, when you take a leap of faith, that could go wrong. So I see some of this as being normal risks dating that have always been, around for all of us to see, and that we're just grappling to address, because now we don't know where the bot is coming in. Like, we don't know exactly where AI is starting to take over the conversation, and maybe that's the problem or challenge.
Yeah. And I think speaking of safety, I think this is where it gets serious, and this is where I think this AI technology can be largely leveraged, because there was this recent horrifying incident that showed a man in the US who was reportedly being reported on this dating app but despite that multiple reports, he still stayed active for years on that app, and he sort of continued to harm a lot of people. And later down the line, he was sort of sentenced to 60 or 158 years in prison. But this is something where it tells us that AI is not being used where it actually matters, which is protecting people. And what we also see is that a lot of these companies, big conglomerates who are owning a lot of these big apps, are not trying to root out these abuses. They're doing it, but like we see that safety is not their priority when it comes to leveraging this AI technology. Yes, they're doing it to some extent, but not to the extent that they could have really leveraged this technology. So I think, the safety problem, quote unquote, is not fixed.
Taking from what Akib said on the big techs kind of monetizing on this model, of course, there is the risk of, there is a direct incentive for them to keep pursuing and like to have users stay on the app for as long as possible. And that is done in various forms. And one of them is the lack of sufficient safeguards and attempts to make this a safer space. But also there are larger privacy risks that emanate from just the nature of the data that is literally served to these tech companies on a platter, right? So given that dating is such a private sphere of one's lives, the data that is collected is also highly personal. Its conversations, its preferences, its behaviors, and all of this is it can help profile people and down to the T. So if Shweta or Chavi would like to throw some light on what the legal or policy issues could be.
Before we get into the legal issues, so there's one more thing that I wanted to highlight, which is just whenever we're having a discussion about dating apps, we're thinking about Gen Z and the younger generation, or like younger millennials, right? And we're not really considering the minority users of these platforms, which are the older people. And the assumption that the Gen Z are usually more likely to get impacted by AI is sort of misguided, because most of us are at least aware of that AI is something that is being integrated. We've seen news emerging about AI being incorporated on these platforms. You're able to distinguish between what is AI and what is not. This might be a bigger issue for some of the older people who might actually be likely to get misguided even more than us.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times they are at the receiving end of a lot of these scams. So that's really a big disappointment there. It reminds me of that movie Her, where the ultimate end is a disappointment. But yeah,
I know
sure.
we're talking about dating apps. So we're looking at I guess we're looking at adults as a demographic, but there's a lot of other features and filters on these dating apps, such as, like the ones that allow you to make friends and just general community building. And there's been multiple reports and studies that suggest that children actually are very susceptible to falling prey and falling highly dependent for emotional support on bots. So that is also a demographic that warrants some protection, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because what I'm taking from this discussion is, one is the way AI is being integrated across apps is not uniform. So the concerns are also not a monolith. It's not like there is one set list of risks, period. It really depends app to app, how is the AI integration taking place, and then app to app, who's the demographic, So there may be dating apps that are more geared towards, say, hooking up. There may be those that are a little more serious about committed relationships. You don't know whether that nature necessarily influences the level of risk, but maybe it just alters the demographic that's on that platform. And so, some of the stuff around kids. And then if some of them, like Madhya, you're saying, they don't just facilitate dating, they are, in fact, I think Bumble also recently announced that, hey, we don't just want to be a dating app anymore. We want to allow people to connect for more reasons. So that probably means a lot more people may start using these apps. Right now, we're looking at people only for dating, but essentially a lot of interactions will start getting mediated. And so, yeah, there is a need to then think about what are the kind of solutions, or what are the kind of things to look out for. Because on the one hand, if a business is looking to integrate AI to increase user base at a time when people are disillusioned with dating, it's also taking on a bit of a gamble, because right now our legal policy landscape is a little unsettled in some areas. So you guys mentioned privacy, for instance, and we do have a data protection law. It's been enacted. It's not yet been enforced. There are draft rules that have come out as well. I suppose to whatever extent that framework is capable, it can at least be leveraged to address some of this, because it very squarely applies to digital personal data. We don't do that distinction between, information that is sensitive and information that's personal. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, because you don't have to then kind of take the onus of proving whether one particular data point about you needs more protection than the other. When it's personal, you can seek redress. But I think the part that's interesting is, because you guys also talk about safety. I think from a content moderation standpoint, it's very interesting what our legal landscape looks like, because right now a lot of dating apps are intermediaries under our information technology laws, and typically intermediaries are not held liable for the content posted by another person. So to give an example, if normally I were to send something pretty, I don't know, abusive to someone else over a dating app, that app would not be liable. But how does this kind of now change if there is a third-party AI solution integrated in that dating app? Now it gets a little murkier, because it's not clear that the AI solution or a chatbot is an intermediary, because it publishes content on its own. Typically, an intermediary is just, sitting between people, not originating content, not initiating any transmission. It's just enabling interaction. But a chatbot, especially with that AI concierge type model, where it's one AI concierge talking to another, there is a generation of content. They have some information about what you are as a person. They use that to then talk to another AI concierge. And whether that, if there is any harmful content there, for instance, is that covered by the intermediary framework? I don't think that's very clear. Then there's also consumer protection. As a framework, again, it's not super clear how it applies to AI, but it certainly becomes relevant. So I think we have building blocks of frameworks that are trying to keep people safe online. And it's important to also realize we have some measures that we've already taken on this front. So we need to be a little careful. If we're concerned about rushing to regulate, we need to first see if these frameworks are sufficient. But on that note, actually, Chavi, I remember you were telling me that now there's also enforcement actions in other countries, right, against dating apps for some of these, like privacy. So from what you know, what are you seeing? And what is the legal risk other countries are looking at when they see AI integration?
Most of the cases that I've come across are also dealing with privacy. And like most other forms of cases regarding privacy, the most prominent issue that is highlighted is that of informed consent. And when apps are integrating AI, what kind of notice would they be required to give? What kind of data would they be collecting? And how would that be informed to the users? That has become a major issue. And this has been highlighted in the recent case in Austria, which under the GDPR framework. And they have tried to take Bumble to court, alleging that there was no proper notice regarding the updated terms and the AI models which are being incorporated, the harvesting data, which they have not said that would be collected. And also, they have highlighted a specific concern regarding a very sensitive kind of data that we share with dating apps, because usually on apps, most of our conversations are not that intimate. But on dating apps, this shifts a little. Everything from your sexual orientation to even your financial records is often discussed. And this becomes particularly true then for matrimonial apps, where there's even more, this sensitive kind of data being shared.
Yeah. I think there's one thing actually we've not discussed a lot, also because we are talking about AI integration into dating apps. But what do you guys make of the trend of people just moving to AI chatbots alone to fulfill that companionship? Because I remember Chavi was once mentioning that with a lot of this AI concierge stuff, some people were just getting disillusioned and turning to, say, ChatGPT or something. What do you guys make of that? Do you think that poses a very different concern? Like, do you see anything different there than with integrating it into apps directly?
I think one of the things that comes to mind is that, like, it is very clear that this is an extension or a reaction to the global epidemic of loneliness, right? Like, capitalism has pushed us to to individualism to an extent where people are just not in, or don't have the time or energy to invest in interpersonal relationships. And I think generally this is leading to a trend where people don't want to invest the time or the effort in developing human connections organically. They want like companionship and instant gratification. And I think one of the risks that comes to my mind is that we will become, or we could become, very self-centered, because an interaction with AI is a one-way road. It is solely focused on your needs, your wants, your problems, your desires, and it might make us incapable of empathizing and being compassionate with others.
Just want to say one thing. I saw this documentary circulating on YouTube where this person leaves their spouse for an AI bot. And I don't think that's the AI's fault. I think it's a people problem as much as it is a tech and AI problem.
On that note, recalling there's this Australian comedian, so he appeared on the show On It and On It, Off It, something podcast, and he revealed that he was on this train, and then he noticed a man messaging ChatGPT, and like it was his girlfriend, and he was texting something like, "I've never been able to connect with somebody like you before," and then there's a massive paragraph, and then initially the comedian thought that he has found someone really lovely, and then he's able to connect with that person, only to realize it was a chatbot. So yeah, I think it's personally, I think it's pathetic that humans have turned to artificial intelligence for human connection. So yeah, I think that's a disappointment.
I have some. I think I have some empathy in that. I think it's also people are, we're in a world where everyone is kind of dispersed around the globe for what they do for a living. Not everyone necessarily connects to the people that are immediately around them. Like, let's say you're in a very different country, for example, cultural differences, linguistic, maybe there's a thing. And so you're not finding the connection in your immediate environment. I understand why people feel drawn. And I think post COVID, especially, it got so normalized because, like, for instance, I started working virtually. Like, I think before 2020, nobody would have started their job over a laptop, but I did it for 3 years because there was a global pandemic. So when you bring in people who've already seen this level of normalization of digital interaction, it's not a huge leap for them to then start looking for digital solutions. And I guess it's what Madhya was saying, it's a very supportive sort of chatbot. It's going to
too supportive for people.
Yes, sycophantic. Yes,
that's true. But I mean, I really sort of agree with what you said there, and I think I also personally believe that COVID actually really worsened a lot of these things. But like, this brings me, me to the concluding remarks on this, is that yes, sort of COVID made a lot of things worse and made people lonelier and a lot of things. But the real question here that I personally keep asking myself is that these dating apps, are these really helping us connect better with other human beings, or is it doing the opposite? And this is where I think that this technology, this AI integration, should get people to use this technology to get people offline faster, rather than staying on the apps itself. So the thing that you asked, saying that yes, it's an escape, or like people can't find real human connection, but the whole genesis of these dating apps was to bring people outside these apps and make them meet in the real world. But right now, too often, I think it's doing the opposite.
Yeah, I would second that, actually, because I understand the layer of anonymity that allows you to be true authentic self, because it's easier to say certain things like from a screen as opposed to sitting across somebody. But at the end of the day, and for a relationship to be truly sustainable and resilient in the long run, if that is the aim, again, depends on what you're looking for. But if that is the aim, then I don't think there is a shortcut to putting in the work, the effort, and taking the bait, and which involves the emotional risk and the chances of getting hurt and being vulnerable. But that is core, and it's central to the human experience. And if we take that away, this, like he said, would not remain meaningful at all.